What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Lights Out. I'm your host, Josh.
And I'm your co-host, Austin.
And Danny is here today, but he has no microphone, sadly. But he is here running cameras for us because today we have, as you can see if you're watching, we're sitting next to each other. Not just because we really like each other, but because...
No, I thought that's why. I thought it's because we like each other. Maybe we should just do this
forever.
Yeah, do the whole...
Hey, guys.
We should share a microphone, too.
Yeah, that would get pretty gnarly pretty quick. But yeah, anyways, today we have a very special episode. Please welcome to the show Lauryn, a absolutely awesome person that I found kind of by chance, but she is a psychic and she also has a YouTube channel which is called Psychic Lauryn. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah.
We're super stoked, and it's kind of a fun story of how I even found you, because it was totally random. Or was it random?
I would say not.
Yeah. Honestly, I agree with you. I don't think it was totally random. So going back, we were preparing for our special Lights Out project. I believe, I could be wrong, it may have been another episode where we were talking about Ouija boards. And I literally went on YouTube. I just typed in how to safely use a Ouija board. Because you guys know I don't mess around with that stuff. This guy, on the other hand.
I was Google searching how to dangerously use Ouija boards.
So, yeah. So knowing that, I was like, one of us has to be equipped and prepared. So that I stumbled across your channel that way because one of your most popular videos is literally how to safely use a Ouija board, right?
Yeah. I was surprised that it was my most popular. Not my normal content, but yeah.
People love Ouija boards.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, people are obsessed with them, and I'm kind of low-key obsessed with them as well, but I didn't want to just I'd never used one before, so I didn't want to just dive into it, because I know lots of things can happen possibly if you don't use it correctly. So I found your video that way, then I just happened to find out that you're here in Denver. And so I was like, this is a great opportunity to bring on a psychic as well as somebody who's just knowledgeable in these different subjects that we often talk about. And we're often talking about it from, purely a, research point of view, like reading articles, not like a practical point of view, whereas you have practical experience with a number of these tools, but also just psychic mediumship. So really excited to have you on today. So thank you so much for joining us. But yeah, let's kind of just start by letting everybody know who you are, and kind of how did you get to the point that you're at now. And I think it's a little interesting to hear about the YouTube channel too, because I think a lot of people will be interested in that. Yeah. And we'll obviously have that linked if you want to go check it out, because you have a lot of content out there. So
a lot. Yeah, I've been on YouTube for many, many years, but I'm Lauryn. I'm a psychic. I'm a medium. I also say that I'm a psychic development coach. So I not only give people like private readings, but I also teach people how to develop their abilities. And I went and kind of studied and learned how to do this. And when I went online, I couldn't find any videos about how do you do this? How do you develop your clairs? How do you develop, those psychic senses? And back in the day, I was like, well, I'll just record some videos, throw them up. Now it's turned into a whole channel of me kind of coaching and teaching people how to do it. But as far as my story goes, I would say that I really wasn't somebody who was into psychic stuff, mediumship stuff at all. I kind of led a pretty normal childhood, went to school, did sports, nothing crazy, nothing exciting. I think you hear a lot of psychics and mediums who have near-death experiences, or they have like these crazy stories happen to them, and then all of a sudden they're psychic. And I didn't really have that. And we were kind of talking before this, and I went to film school. I went down that route. I was going to be a video producer. I was a video producer. And
what's your favorite movie?
What's my favorite? Oh, don't ask me that question.
We have a lot of film nerds in-house here.
Honestly, I'm really tired of hearing about it. I'm just kidding. No, it's the amount of movie discussions that happen in this building are like off
incessant.
the
charts.
Yeah. I don't miss that about film sometimes. I would say E.T.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
Clockwork Orange is one of my favorites.
Sweet. Spielberg and Kubrick.
Yeah.
Clockwork Orange. That's a disturbing movie
I know,
too.
right?
Yeah.
So what was your knowledge around psychics? Did you never cross paths with any throughout your childhood or teenage years or young adult years?
Yeah, no, I mean, the most I ever saw was like, I watched Paranormal Activity.
Oh, of course.
When
Yeah.
that came out. And I think Chip Coffey was one of the mediums. There's something about him that I remember watching at that age and being like, he's the real deal. Like, he's connecting. I didn't know how, but I knew he was doing something right. And that was about all the exposure that I had. And really just didn't pay much attention to it. And then in film school, I had to make a documentary, and I had just lost 3 people in my life. I think it was my grandfather, my great-grandfather, and my family dog. And right back to back, they all passed away right after each other. And I was understandably upset, wanting to reach out to them. I think I went to a metaphysical fair here in Colorado, and they have psychics all around the walls. And
Oh, wow.
it's like 20 minutes for $20, I think. And
Okay.
I was like, I need to see a psychic. I need to connect with my dog. I was most concerned about my dog. And walked right in. I was so terrified. I thought I was going to go to hell just for being there. And went in, found a psychic, got a reading from her, and she just blew my mind.
Oh, wow.
She
So
got
you had a
everything.
very positive first experience then.
Absolutely. Yeah. And she even told me at that fair, she was like, you can be psychic too. You are psychic. And I was like, what? And she just was like, I can tell.
That's
like-
interesting.
Yeah.
You don't often hear that, I feel like. Because I feel like most people, at least people's experiences that I've seen online that people have shared, it's kind of this gatekeeping mentality with a lot of psychics of like, I possess this ability and you don't, so therefore you need me, you need my services to provide answers.
Like
But
you're born that way.
yeah, exactly. Like this is truly a gift that I've been gifted with that you can't necessarily have. But to have a psychic be like, no, you can do this as well.
And that's your philosophy, right? Is that we can all tap in to this.
I mean, that's what my coach's philosophy was. Like, when I was making this documentary, I was trying to find psychics to film, and she had a program called the Aspen Program for Psychic Development, and they were teachers and students in person practicing this. And I wanted to just purely film from like an academic standpoint, but she was like, hey, you should come and take some classes so I can get to know you before you film. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And so I showed up for like the first intro level course, and she was talking about like everyone's psychic. Everyone has this ability, this intuitive skill. It's kind of like a spectrum. Like the more you practice it, the more you engage with it, the stronger that it gets. So like I would say most people who aren't familiar with this, they probably just kind of have those like gut hunches. You just have a feeling about something, but maybe sometimes it's not always like right. Sometimes it doesn't come in when you want it to. But then the people who practice and put in that exercise, that's when you may start to call yourself psychic, because it's coming through more often, it's coming through more accurately. But yeah, I kind of adopted her philosophy purely because like it literally worked for me. Like I wasn't a psychic. I sat down, I learned the techniques and the exercises, and I just realized, oh, this is something that everybody has. And I did the practice, and that's really the only difference between me and somebody who's completely new to it.
Yeah, it sounds like kind of like an artistic craft.
Mhm.
You could just, people sit down with a musical instrument. The more you practice, the better you get.
Exactly.
It's basically
Yeah,
that.
or like training a muscle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's the other thing too about it, is that when let's say you go into the gym and you want to get ripped, you don't go in one day and expect to be, super ripped, with the day that you
Overnight.
come
No.
out. No.
A lot of people think that though.
And so it's like riding a bike. Everyone can learn how to ride a bike. Some people might start out better at it. Some people might take a little bit more time. And then also, if you stop riding your bike, if you kind of get out of practice, you're going to get a little rusty trying to get back into it. So just like any other skill.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I think I didn't know that there's like full on, like I obviously know there's like YouTube videos you can watch where people like are in like your videos as well. But there's actual courses for this.
Mm-hmm.
And are those courses like, is there a standard curriculum for psychics, or is it really just kind of an individual sort of approach?
Yeah, I wish like unfortunately, there's no governing body of psychics. There's no like one main institute. I think it would be really cool to get there in our lifetime, but unfortunately, it's a lot of people who are putting out their own philosophies and their own courses. So even the certifications I took, it was just under somebody and a group of people that felt a certain way about it. It's not anything like it's not at a university locally. A lot of this industry is still very stigmatized. It's very frowned upon. But the course that I took was very much like school, and I had to read volunteers. I had to do homework. I had to do readings there. I had to do readings, outside of the class. So it was very similar to kind of like a school. Yeah.
How much is it like just reading people as in their behaviors or their mood or the energy that they give off, like in a social? Is it more of that, or are you actually tapping into something way deeper than that?
That's a good question, because it's a little bit of both, but it's more about like, I'm connecting to you. I'm going to tune into your energy and connect to like a psychic source. Maybe that's your spirit guides. Maybe it's your higher self. Maybe it's loved ones on the other side. You kind of set that intention. And I'm going to connect to you and messages only for you. But yeah, as I'm doing that, I am tuning into your energy. So like I can pick up on nervousness, on anxiousness, on judgment, like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this person. Yeah, so you're getting a little bit of everything.
I have heard this idea. It was this book that I read earlier this year. It was called Mother Doll by Katya Apakina. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Anyway, she did a lot of research for this book by doing these classes for like psychics and mediums and stuff, because a lot of the book is about talking with the dead. Oh. And one idea that she had come across is that psychics just have this perception that is developed over time, possibly because of environments that they were raised in. Like, let's say you have a father who's maybe abusive or something, and that father comes home and you have to start reading him really well because you're in such like an environment that could change on a dime. Absolutely. That you have to just start perceiving these things that maybe are not spoken, but that you can pick up on. Yeah. I always found that kind of fascinating. I don't know if you have anything like that, more just like this perception of reality that you're tapping into.
Yeah, kind of what you're describing reminds me of like highly sensitive people is what we kind of say. People who are very sensitive to like crowds, or like I'm in a room with somebody else and like I can feel all their emotions. These are like empaths. And I think I definitely experience that sometimes when I'm really open, really excited, want to let people in. But I've kind of learned that I have to like put my boundaries up, put a wall up so I don't feel everybody's stuff all the time, or else it'd be just too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Today's video is sponsored by Aura, and it's a really important time to be talking about them because if you didn't hear, recently hackers may have stolen the social security numbers of every American. Can you believe that? I'm not making that up either. Over 2.9 billion records were stolen from the National Public Data, which offers personal information to employers, private investigators, staffing agencies, and others doing background checks. These stolen records include a person's full name, address, date of birth, social security number, and phone number, along with alternate names and your birth date. And members of this hacking group have reportedly released this information for free online. And recently, in the last year or so, I actually had my personal tax return filed fraudulently, which was a surprise to me. I just got a letter in the mail that was like, basically we flagged your return as fraudulent. And the investigator told me that, they had filed the return as me and they had put the, like the return address and name for the refund to some completely different name of which I'd never heard of before. And it was for a shit ton of money. And luckily, they were able to stop it from happening. And they're actually criminally investigating this person or whatever operation that's doing this, because this is actually a pretty common thing that's happened out there. If you weren't taking precautions with your personal information online before, this should be a huge wake-up call. You've never been more vulnerable online than you are right now. But I'm not too worried about it because I use Aura. Aura alerts me if they find my phone number, email, or social security number on the dark web. They're also going to let me know super fast if anyone tries to use my information to access my credit or bank accounts. And this is what I truly love about them, is that they give me up to $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst case scenario happen. So luckily, I've been a subscriber of Aura for a number of years now. And so when this all unfolded, obviously one of my concerns was that my identity had been stolen, and I was able to find out that no, it didn't quite go that far, but just having that peace of mind, knowing that if for some reason whoever filed these returns fraudulently was able to access my bank account, drain all my assets, that I did have this insurance through Aura. They also provide you a bunch of other features to keep you safe online, all inside of one app. So if you're ready to take your privacy seriously and get the ultimate protection, you can go to my link, aura.com/lightsout, to try 14 days for free. That'll be enough time for Aura to find out if there's any of your personal data that is exposed. I highly recommend that you do this right now, because not only is the national public data not going to do anything to help you, they probably aren't even going to face any repercussions for this leak, which is absolutely insane. I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to data breaches, and you don't want to either. You can go to aura.com/lightsout to try for 2 weeks for free. So what was like your first experience? Like once you take the courses, you're honing your craft, like who did you do your first reading with? Was it somebody like completely random, or was it somebody that you knew personally?
I think it was just another student in the program that I was doing. It was just like a group of people, and it was that intro-level course. And I think my teacher just kind of gave us a real generic, like, turn to your partner, see what you can pick up on. And I think we were actually, I feel like one of the first ones we had to do was like pick up on a timeline, like where was their life in the past? Like, can you get anything about them? And maybe get something about where they're at now, and then get something about the future. Just like really quick little exercises. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to do this. And I'm probably just making it up. And I connected with my partner, told her what I guessed, totally not, being doubtful of myself. And I'm sure I probably got a lot of it wrong, but a lot of it right as well. So I think that was probably all my first readings were in that program. Because again, I was not psychic before this. I mean, yes, in theory I was, we all are, but I hadn't thought about it. I hadn't strengthened that muscle until then.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the teacher's name that you were studying, or the psychic you were studying under?
Yeah, her name's Karen Fox. I actually just interviewed her recently on my podcast as well.
Oh, cool.
She's such a cool person. She had actually like got several psychics together for that. So there was like a whole group of people teaching students, and I feel so lucky to have taken it, because it's unfortunately not around anymore. And it's really hard to come by like physical, like in-person classes nowadays, it seems like, especially like post-COVID. But yeah.
Yeah. So what's like the course layout? Like how do you like what's like the first step that you take when you get in it? Because I'm trying to wrap my head around, because there's all these different things like that you've already mentioned too, talking about you've got everything from past lives to spirit guides to, just being an empath and all these different things. And they all fall within this spectrum of being psychic. Is that correct? Like that all kind of falls under the umbrella for that. So is it just kind of like different for the individual, which they kind of gravitate towards, or like, because I know some psychics they specifically focus on like past life readings versus other things, and maybe they're psychic in other ways, but that's just what they choose to like put their focus into. Mm-hmm. What was like the first thing that you felt like you were really drawn into?
I was first drawn into animal communication, actually. So
interesting.
That's one thing I primarily do, is animal communication. But
like with deceased animals, or animals that are
alive and past. So often I'll like connect with people who are like about to adopt a pet, and they're like, is this cool? Are you okay with the other pets in the house? Or even just like helping them when they're getting near the end of their life. Like, how can I make you more comfortable? What do you need? Stuff like that. That's where I was first drawn to. But I would say for most people, where you want to start is understanding just the basic of how the psychic ability works. And you're right that like all sorts of people can come from all sorts of backgrounds. So you could be coming in and having so many experiences and it's freaking you out and there's like way too much stimulus, kind of like you were talking about. Or you could be more like me, who's like, I don't know how to do this. How do I turn it on? How do I get messages to come through? And so the basis is really learning how to get the messages to come through, but also how to be safe and like protect yourself. Because as soon as you open yourself up to that, you're opening yourself up to everyone else in the room physically, also spirits that are around, and it could just be a lot. So you really have to learn protection and boundaries first, and then you can start to get into, okay, how do I make this muscle stronger? So that's why I always encourage anyone that works with me. I'm like, do the boundaries first. Don't go grabbing the Ouija board. Don't go grabbing this or that.
Right.
Until you know how to like tune them out, you know?
Interesting.
Do you have a pet?
I do. 2. I have a dog and a kitty, and one kitty who passed away earlier this year. So I was able to kind of use my own abilities to help her cross as well. So
that's good.
I should probably learn how to do that. I've got a lot of pets. And I wish I could understand them more. I feel like I can sometimes. Feel like one of my dogs here, Bernie, he like is constantly trying to communicate with me. The way he looks at me and just he looks like I feel like there's a human inside him, you know what I mean? Which is interesting because maybe there's something to that he's so like, he's very intelligent. He's very like, you know, feels like he's trying to constantly like communicate, just like the eye contact and just like the way he looks at you. You're like, are you trying to say something?
Yeah. But I feel like animals though, I mean, I don't claim to have any psychic abilities, but I feel like animals, you can read a lot of body language. Like they do communicate just in very different ways. And you kind of tap into that. I wonder if that form of communication is like adjacent to psychic communication, like reading an animal, even though there's no verbal communication. But is that anywhere close to like what psychic communication is like?
Yeah. The thing I love is this analogy of like, think of your psychic ability like a tube. It's like a tube connecting you to the divine, you know, whatever that is. And this tube is like where information flows in and out. And you can decide who's on the other end of that tube. Maybe a better, you know, way to think of it is even like a phone. You're picking up a phone, you're dialing somebody who's at the other end. And so animal communicators, they set the intention, okay, on the other end of that ability that I'm using to talk to them is pets. I'm talking to animals that are past, animals that are present. Whereas like a medium is like, nope, I'm going to connect to spirits that have crossed. And that's like what I'm doing. So it's all the psychic ability. It's all that same ability to send and receive messages back and forth. But it's just, who are you talking to? So there's like a ton of psychics out there who absolutely do not want to be mediums. They don't want to talk to people that have crossed over. And so they will set the intention, don't bother me, don't talk to me. I'm only talking to spirit guides, higher self, God, you know, whatever it is that they feel most comfortable with. Yeah.
Gotcha. And you say you do both, correct?
Yeah. I've learned everything I can learn. I'm just like, I love to soak up knowledge. So I've done animal communication. I've also done shamanism. I've done medical intuition as well. So just a little bit of everything. But I try to keep it open to anything and everything. So if people have angels that come through, awesome. If they're more connected to the darker stuff, cool. You know, I really try to be non-denominational and open it up to anything, really.
Wow.
Well, that's of highest and best good. We're not talking anything scary. That's not going to be helpful.
I was going to say there has to be a little asterisk on that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little name starts with a Z. I like to call out to. So, okay. We're dumb over here when it comes to this stuff.
Yes.
All right. Like for somebody who is listening, who's like, I hear what you're saying. Can you break down in like the simplest form that you can of like, what is it to be psychic? Like, what am I actually doing? Like in my 101 course, what am I going to be told to do? Am I doing a lot of meditating and starting with that? Or am I just literally setting an intention for like what, how do I tap into that? Like if we're all psychic, how do I do that? Like I want to do this. So how do I?
Yeah. Starting from ground zero, like if I were to try and start my journey today, what would your advice be?
My advice would be, I mean, a lot of the psychic ability is unlearning a lot of stuff that you've been taught over the years about what it is, your ability to do it. So we call that like removing blocks to your ability. Think of that tube. A lot of us have like a really gunked up tube and you need to clean it out.
Telling me.
Yeah. You have to have like a clean and clear vessel. And so the main intention of like psychic development is you're going to strengthen your abilities to be able to send and receive messages. That's the overall goal. So like in my courses, I teach you how to clean it out, make sure that nothing is blocking you. But then also, how do you strengthen it? How do you see better? How do you hear spirit? How do you connect to the right one and make sure that like that's the one you want to talk to? And I always say like setting your psychic business hours, making sure they're not talking to you.
Yeah, you're trying to go to bed. Yeah.
So am I doing like a ritual then to like cleanse myself? Like is it to like get rid of those blocks, or is this purely all in the mind? Like, am I physically doing anything to clear these blocks, or am I strictly doing mind work basically?
I would say it's whatever works for you, but okay. I approach it mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. For example, like physically, you can absolutely do like a physical ritual if you feel like that helps clear out your energy. If I haven't gotten enough sleep and I'm like running off of hours only and I need to do a reading, that could be like a physical block to my abilities. I can't even function and get out of bed, much less do a reading. So we might have to do a little bit of that, but it is, I would say, mostly mental. It's like, what beliefs do you have that's kind of in your way? If you had a very religious upbringing, you're going to have things in the back of your mind. A lot of work
to do before I can tap into it. So I got a long way to go before I can tap. That's interesting. Okay. So you basically have anybody that wants to embark on this journey has to find their baseline, or like bring their mind, body, soul to a baseline where you feel open. It's all about being open, right? Like it's allowing your mind to be open to everything and being able to set intentions where you want to put them in a clear and concise way without external factors. This Correct. Is kind of how I'm understanding. Okay.
Yeah.
And so is it a lot of sitting by yourself and doing this, or is this something that I can do throughout my day as I'm like doing other things? Or is it something I left to literally sit down, quiet, dark room, and almost like meditate, and be in this zone where I can really like do the work in my mind? Because I'm thinking you're going throughout your day, you're thinking about every other thing going on. Like it's got to be difficult to also be working on the psychic ability.
Oh, yeah. That's why I always say like psychics do not just show up and do the reading right then and there. They're always working on this. They're always doing things in the background every day to kind of keep themselves clean and clear. But yeah, I mean, meditation is one option. That's super helpful for some people. I mean, really what we're talking about is just doing introspective, work. We're looking at what's going on. So for some people, it might be journaling. Some people, exercise actually helps them clear out the mind and get in that like really centered and present state. So like I try to kind of teach all of those tools, but for me, I like to journal. I like to journal and maybe pull some cards and, kind of figure out what's blocking me right now. What's coming up? Why am I having such a hard time reading this person, or people in general? And so there's doing that work outside of your reading, but there's also doing that work during a reading. Like if I'm trying to read you and I'm just getting crickets and I'm drawing a blank and I'm panicking, like how do I get out of that? So there's a lot of, it's mostly mental to answer your question. But it can also be physical. It's really depends on like, how do you get in that zone? How do you get into that meditative state where you don't have that monkey mind, that like chatter where you're worried about your grocery list and all the things that you have to go do after this,
Yeah, I like the monkey mind.
Yeah.
That's so.
I feel like I'm always in monkey mind mode.
Yeah, but it's difficult to block out the noise.
Yeah,
right. And just being a human being is difficult. So obviously, psychics have been around since probably the beginning of time. I mean, you could argue that some biblical figures, prophets and such, could kind of fall into the category of psychic in a way. I mean, they're channeling messages from God. Like, is it because you said being psychic is connecting with the divine? So is a religious person technically a psychic when they're connecting to the divine, or does that not fall into the same realm? I'm curious.
Yeah. No, I think so. I mean, if you're using your ability to connect to something on the other side, whatever it may be, I would say you're psychic, you're an oracle, you're intuitive, you're a shaman, there's technical nuances with all of these, but
I take back what I just said then. I am definitely psychic then. I spent a lot of years attempting to connect to the divine.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think for me it was, I feel like I had a moment when, and I truly look back at this moment, and it was very impactful in my life because it was the moment that I realized that I needed to leave the religion I was in. And it felt divine also because of the environment. I was in the Costa Rican jungle, and it was a thunderstorm, and I was on a mission trip, and I was sitting around with the rest of the group. We were, funny enough, singing Kumbaya, which is just kind of ironic. But we were literally like, having a service. And I remember just like something told me to like get up, walk away. And I walked away from the group, and I found myself by myself just looking up at the sky, and then lightning going across the sky. And I feel like I just was kind of like in this like, what am I doing? Like, what is this? And I felt in that moment that there was something divine happening, because something was telling me, this is not your path. Like, this is maybe their path, but this isn't your path. And it's time to leave this group and go out on your own journey, not this journey that you've sort of been forced to be on all these years. And I'll never forget that moment, because as soon as I came home from that trip, I was like, I'm done. I'm not going back to this church anymore, because it's not for me. I want to go on my own quest to find the truth, or find out what my truth is in life, and who I am, and what do I believe. And I feel like I had a lot of experiences over the years where I felt like I tapped into something divine. It just didn't match up with what I was being taught. Right? Like, it was like they're telling me I'm connecting with Jesus Christ or God, or, one of the Holy Spirit, one of those things. But to me, it never felt like any of those things. I felt like I was connecting with something different. I'm curious, like, what's your thoughts on that? Like, do you feel like that is just my intuition, or is that like something psychic? Is that me tapping into my psychic ability?
Yeah, I would say so. Because intuition, psychic ability, I use those interchangeably. I think it's the same thing.
Okay.
So, and I was kind of tuning into it intuitively as you were talking about it. And it was a moment where you heard that. It was kind of like thoughts in your mind, correct?
Totally. Yeah.
Okay.
It was like voices in my head telling me.
Yeah.
It was very clear. It felt like a lot of years it was kind of muddied. And I think maybe it was because of all these blocks that I had. But then it was a moment where I was like, finally, a crystal clear message coming through, like I'm actually getting some like form of understanding. And it's like,
it was an epiphany.
Yeah. It was like light bulb,
yeah.
Light bulb going off. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it was like, and I've always chalked it up to like intuition. So it's interesting to hear those terms are interchangeable, because I feel like I have a fairly strong intuition throughout my daily life. I just never have like equated it to I'm a psychic, because I think most of us have this probably programmed belief around psychics that it's like
Hollywood-esque.
Yeah, it's always fortune tellers, right? It's always like people predicting the future.
Yeah. The amount of times I've been asked to come to parties with a turban on my head.
Oh God!
What?
No,
oh my God!
Not doing that.
Yeah, problematic. Yeah, and I think you agree, like Hollywood and stuff has like made it.
Oh yeah, I think that's a lot of like what we fight now is that the assumption. And so I think a lot of like why I want to do this and ground it and be like, no, I'm like a normal person is because a lot of that is just so out there and so just not, it just doesn't make sense. It's not right. And
misconception.
It gives people the wrong idea. When they come to see me, they're like, oh, you're going to tell me when I'm going to die? And I'm like, no.
Yeah. We were kind of talking about that a little earlier. And unfortunately, I remember the first time I went into a psychic to get my reading done, I didn't have that much of a rigid opinion on it where it's like, oh, they're just going to tell me X, Y, and Z is going to happen. But I kind of did at the same time. But yeah, once I sat down with the psychic and we kind of just had a conversation, this like nice back and forth, reflective moments and talking about the future and stuff, I realized it's more of just a dialogue and they're reading into something and helping you process certain things. And that really opened my mind to what a psychic is, because I wouldn't have gone if my friend didn't pitch it to me like, hey, you want to get a reading done? I was like, sure, why not? But that really opened my mind up to like, what actually is a psychic? Because I think I fell into that trap of the misconceptions early on.
And I mean, every psychic is different. Like you even asked earlier, like some people only specialize in like past lives. They only want to read into certain things. Some people will mix astrology with it. Like you can find literally anyone under the sun for it. But I mean, to your point earlier, like I think your experience, you were probably connected to your intuition, your psychic ability. And I think you were being clairaudient, which means you kind of hear, or you have thoughts in your mind that are just kind of like planted in your head. And even the fact that you're outside and like singing, like you were probably getting into that zone that I was talking about, that meditative state. So it was a lot clearer for that information to come through.
That's such a great point that I think often gets left out, is that you can, I feel like you can put yourself in a better position to be open to that stuff through these environmental factors, for one, and I think a lot of people just don't want to take the time or, put themselves in that state, where, cause like so many of us are like, I need constant stimulation from things. And like, for me, I prefer the quiet moments, I look for those to just be like, I want to be away from everything, unplugged from everything, because I feel like that's where I feel most at peace, for one, but I feel that I can organize everything going on, up in my head. And I think a lot of people, especially people who I've met who are inherently skeptical and stuff, there's usually a lot of things going up there that they just aren't able to kind of put to the side. I mean, you look at just the sheer amount of people that deal with, my wife, for one, who deals with severe anxiety and, there's just so many different things that are affecting us, especially in today's day and age, that it can be very difficult to create that space for yourself. But I think that's a great place to start.
That reminds me, Kendall and I were talking about doing Monday morning meditations, and we haven't done it yet.
100% we need to just have like company meditation time.
Yeah. We were planning that from the camp out. We were like, okay, Monday morning we'll be there, and then we totally bailed on it, never did it.
Well, yeah.
But I feel like you're right. It is in those spaces where you kind of disconnect, that you tap into something else. Basically, you don't think iPad kids can be psychics?
I think it might be more difficult for them to.
I agree.
Because I mean, that brings up the whole question of, why are kids more, tend to have more psychic experiences, just kind of tapped in more to the other side. You hear the absolutely insane stories of kids remembering their past lives.
Yeah.
And their parents kind of helping them figure out who they were. Mm-hmm. And they like know these things that they would never have any way of knowing.
Yeah.
And it's dead on accurate. Like you're like, how? And those stories are some of the ones that made me believe in this so much more, because I'm like, there's just no possible way that this kid would have known these specific things about who they were in a past life. And it kind of fades as they get older. But for some reason, when you're young, and maybe it's because it's closer to your birth, and to being on the other side, whatever that may be. What's kind of your take on like past lives and kids' abilities with that? I
mean, I think again, it goes back to everyone is psychic. And I think that it's a lot of like society and what we're conditioned to believe. I think we're all psychic as kids. I think most of us can probably point back to certain memories, dreams that we had, experiences that we had that were really creepy or weird. And usually, do you get that validation from your parents? Probably not. Often we're told, oh, it was just a movie. Oh, it was just a bad dream. Like a lot of people might have imaginary friends, that maybe were not so imaginary. And, you have, not saying that parents are, causing ill will or something. They just, shut that down. We turn off the ability. Or maybe it's just that we don't encourage it. It's like, what if we lived in a society that we didn't encourage people how to learn how to ride bikes? Yeah, nobody's going to learn how to do it unless they're shown how. So I think it's more of like lack of education around it, and also just society saying it's not real, and then you throw in all the religious stuff around it, and just everyone's preconceived notions, Hollywood. You start to just kind of think, oh, well, I can't do that. Or I think it kind of just gets beaten out of every kid, unfortunately.
Yeah, I kind of want to talk about that because we did touch on that earlier, how people have that notion that being psychic and being religious is in direct conflict. Yeah. But we talked about how that's not necessarily true. And even religious people seek out psychics. But yeah, I think like that's a common misconception as well, that it's like, no, this is an affront to God because it's like some form of occult side of things rather than the religious side of things. But yeah, can you speak to that at all? Like,
I mean, I really see the psychic ability as like a tool, as a phone. I'm not telling you who to call on the other end of your phone call. I'm just telling you how to use the phone, And so there are Christian psychics out there. They will connect to angels and God only, and they don't talk to anybody else. And there are people who are pagan or Wiccan, and they are psychics. It's more about like what are their personal beliefs and what do they choose to like read into. So I really see it as a tool that can fit into any religion. And you get to decide what your personal beliefs are. That's why I always try to be very like, don't put your beliefs in it. Don't bring your religion into it. You can kind of keep those on the side, keep it open to anything. Because I think that when you start to narrow that view of like, I'm only going to read XYZ, you're not allowing other information to come through. But I mean, it's preference. It's whatever people resonate with, what they want to use most. So I know a ton of people that read just as Christian psychics, and they're reverends, and they will only connect to like angels. I mean, there's people all across the board.
Yeah, because I think it wasn't Edgar Cayce was a Christian, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he just also said he had this psychic ability and he could access the Akashic records and stuff. That also reminds me of like secular Buddhism is the same concept, because they can, like the Dalai Lama says, you can be a Christian, you can be a Catholic, but you can use concepts of Buddhism to just enhance whatever religion you're already affiliated with.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that. You can be from whatever background, you're using your psychic ability as some form of amplification to that.
I think that's why you see prophets and shamans and oracles all throughout the ages, is because it's not associated with a specific religion. It's a tool. It's a muscle. It's an ability. And what you choose to use it with is up to you.
I like that.
Yeah. Man, that's the message we really need to spread around the world. Good God. At the end of the day, it seems like we're all trying to tap into the same thing. We're all looking for answers. We're all looking to connect with the divine and ultimately figure out, why the hell are we here? What's our purpose here? What are we here on this planet to do? And so that leads me, I want to know, like, what's your take on where does the psychic ability reside within you? Is it my brain? Is it my heart? Is it my soul? Is it like within a biological entity at all? Or is it more of like the energy that we produce?
It's in your colon. Keep it healthy.
Yours is in your colon. Let's be honest. That's why it's so blocked up, dude.
Yeah, it's really blocked up.
You need the colon cleanse.
Speaking of tubes.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say everyone would probably argue it's somewhere different for them, because I feel like some people will say that they read and they receive information like through their heart or through a certain chakra. For me, like, it feels like it's in my mind, but I also don't feel like it's attached to my physical body at all. Like, I feel like if I were to leave, it comes with me. It's my soul. It's probably where I would say it's attached to. I think that we all inherently, and this is my belief, that we come here with this ability to be able to connect to that other side, to answer those questions. And it's not, why would only a certain chunk of people have that ability? I think we all do, and it's probably attached to our soul. It's just how do you figure that out?
Where's the soul at? Yeah, that's a big question. And I've done some research on this, and there's a lot of theories around it. But the leading theory is the soul resides within the heart, because there's actually been some studies done on mind-heart connection that the heart is actually in charge of the mind. A lot of people think the mind controls everything else, but it's actually the heart that is leading the charge within your body. There's a lot of interesting articles and studies on that out there. I can't quote any of them to you right now, but it's just an interesting concept. So like, obviously that's the question that, neuroscientists are trying to figure out is like, where does consciousness reside and what is consciousness? Is consciousness the same as our soul? Like, would you say, is the soul and consciousness the same thing, or does the soul create consciousness that gives us a version of which we can perceive it through these, flesh vehicles that we're piloting around? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think the best way to explain this is just like how I connect to people or animals that have crossed over. Like, they obviously don't have a body anymore, but they are still conscious. They're still healing. They're still moving forward. Sometimes, not always. Sometimes they're stuck or stagnant. But yeah, I would say it's attached to the soul. It's not that I haven't thought much about it. It's just that I'm always open to an evolution of understanding this. Like, if you would have asked me the same question 10 years ago, I would have given you a very textbook answer, But
right.
The more readings that I do and the more that I learn, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm willing to change my perception of how this works. So that's why I'm never like, this is how the universe works, and this is exactly how it works, and this is where we all go. And I feel like psychics that do that are kind of like big red flags for me.
I think anybody that does that's a big red flag. I mean, none of us know at the end of the day. Like, none of us truly know I have to be careful, because those that say they can access the
I do know, Josh. You just have to pay me $10 a month, and I'll teach you everything.
That's right. You have your membership club.
Yeah.
Your how to access the Akashic records. Because we just recently covered a cult.
Yeah, Terry
Hoffman and the Black Lord's cult, and she was very much using meditation to create sort of a course on how to access the Akashic records. The supposed metaphysical space that holds all of the information of the entire universe and all the events and stuff. And I guess somebody may have the answers if they've tapped into that. But I feel like the Akashic records is very everybody kind of either do believe in it or you don't believe in it, or you're just like, I don't know, I've never experienced that. Are you familiar with the Akashic records?
Yeah. They were actually something that we used. It's just like another exercise when I was learning at the Aspen program. And so we had to tap into the Akashic records. It's just another technique, another way of trying to get information for ourselves or for the person that we were trying to read. And I would say that it's just another technique. I know people are going to come after me because there's some people that believe that the Akashic records are a literal actual place. And I kind of see it more symbolic. I feel like what we're connecting to is the space in which we came from, the place that we're going when we die, and all information is there, everything we could want. And so I think it's helpful for some people to imagine it like a library, or to imagine it I don't know, even Walmart. I feel like you can substitute any sort of physical location. Right. And the whole idea is you walk into this place, you ask for an answer, and you got to go to the right aisle, find the right book, open it up, and the answer should be there. And so I think for some people, I remember it was really tough for them, and they were like, I opened up the book and it was blank. And so they just were like,
damn,
I made it to the library, but there was nothing there. Yeah.
I mean, for some people it worked and some people it didn't. And so there's other techniques you can use. Shamanic journeying is another one. I love that one.
Explain that a little bit. Yeah,
shamanic journeying it's a whole process derived from core shamanism, which is all the shamanic practices over the years. This guy got all the information together and kind of came up with what are the core beliefs between all of these shamanic groups, and he kind of wrote it down in a really thick book, and he made the idea of shamanic journeys. And this is he would notice that people that claimed to be shamans would go into a trance, again kind of getting into that zone, that meditative state that we talked about. They use drumming, And then they would receive messages, and then they would bring them back to heal, to help, whatever the mission was. But during shamanic journeys, you're kind of going in with an intention, like, tell me about this or show me this. And they're very like active. They're very visual, maybe not for everybody, but they're very like, they're telling me video game. They being my guides, they're kind of always in my ear. And they're telling me like, it's sort of like a video game, and you're playing along and you're following along your guides, similar to like how you would do automatic writing. But yeah, shamanic journeying being another kind of avenue that you could receive information if, Akashic Records didn't work for you.
And you've done automatic writing too, right?
Yeah.
You do it quite a lot.
Yeah, pretty much. It's one of my favorite ways to do it. I think having 2 young kiddos, I don't get to do it as much as I want to, but
those kids, man, stop you from doing everything you love.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny too, because one of the cool stories that I have with that is that before my son was born, I was like, I'm gonna play around and see if I can connect with my future kid. I knew he was a boy at the time. And so I said, okay, I'm setting the intention, I'm writing, I'm going to connect with my future son and see what his personality is like. And I just started writing, and it takes like, I want to say like a page or so for you to fully like get into the groove. And then it feels like switching gears of a car. Like it starts to flow better, and you can't keep up with your writing. You're not writing as fast as you are like receiving. And anyways, I kind of pulled information from him about his personality, and he started like writing very like sing-song and like rhyming through me. I was like writing down like, I can't remember the words, but like, oh, cat in the hat or something. I don't know. And turns out, many years later, he grows up. He loves Dr. Seuss, loves rhyming. He actually like makes puns as a 4-year-old. And
wow.
So I know.
Sweet.
I wish I could remember a good
Future
one,
comedian?
Maybe. He's a Gemini, so maybe.
And where does the overlap with automatic writing and Ouija boards come in? Because I know it's kind of intertwined a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, essentially what you're doing is you're using a tool to receive that information. And so you can use your physical hand to do that, or you can use the board. But I think actually, automatic writing actually can be found as far back as like some of like the
ancient Chinese.
Yeah. It actually became popular during the spiritualist movement with the Fox sisters, when they kind of brought about seances, and they started pre-Ouija board techniques, but so many things came out of that era of automatic writing.
And a lot of it was to contact the dead, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, that was like the big explosion.
I think there was like one story too where this woman, she lost her son back in that time and wrote letters to her son. And the son apparently wrote through her automatic writing, like, come join me. Like, this is how you can see me again. And she ended up committing suicide.
Whoa.
And so that's, how much of that was her own mental illness versus, automatic writing, like a spirit coming through. But yeah, there's all sorts of stories around it. There's a really popular book called Seth Speaks. And it's a really famous automatic written book where somebody connected to somebody on the other side, and she writes this whole series from Seth, who had a lot to say.
Oh, I think I've heard of that before. Yeah, that's interesting.
So I know you talked about building your walls and getting those in place quick.
Yeah, we have lots of little stuff like
Sorry,
that.
yeah.
I'm not going to be surprised if some weird things happen in here today.
Yeah.
So,
where was it?
What is Spirit's obsession with electronics?
Yeah.
Why are they constantly messing with the electronics?
Well, and I would also argue it could be Mercury in retrograde. Which is
that's actually probably true.
It's okay. We're going to be out of the clear in like
we're almost done.
Days.
Yeah.
But I think I think they do mess with electronics because it's an easier way to get our attention, because we're not paying attention to our psychic abilities. We're not, even like with our animals, it's like they're trying to communicate with us and they have to look at us with those eyes. And even then we don't hear them. And so I think it's a really obvious way to get our attention. Yeah.
That's a good point.
So let me ask you this, kind of going back to, well, actually, there's so many things I want to ask. But since you mentioned seances and you were telling us an interesting story about an individual who believes in ectoplasm. Will you talk about that a little bit? Because I find that really interesting. When I first heard, I think it was like the movie A Haunting in Connecticut, I think is what it is. And there's like the great like seance scene in there, and then the like ectoplasm coming out of the mouth and like this whole thing. And I was like obsessed with that whole concept because I'm like, that is sick.
I think they used that as the poster, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
The
ectoplasm.
Yeah.
It's such a cool history. I've been reading a ton of books for like an upcoming video that I want to create about the Fox sisters who started this movement. Where do I start without like getting into the weeds?
Have you done a seance before?
Yeah. I actually host them.
So what makes that different than anything else? Like, is it a group of people coming together?
Yeah.
Joining, kind of putting everybody's intention all together,
Correct.
sort of.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like you'll sit in a circle, and usually the intention is we want to connect with loved ones on the other side, or just spirits in general. A lot of people also call them spirit circles, and that's like the more tame, palatable name. And that might be more for people who are a little scared. Sometimes I'll say
I like
that.
seance. Sounds like.
Seance is actually French for session.
Oh.
It's kind of so lame when you say it like that. Yeah.
Well, I take that back. I like spirit circles.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, these Fox sisters, to make it like a short story.
Yeah, we got to write that down. Fox sisters.
Sisters.
We got to look into these guys.
Oh my gosh.
Sounds like a good episode for us.
There's two sisters. They were in a home, 1840s. They were young, 11 and 14. And they heard knocking in their home, like rapping. And everyone, they told the whole town, everyone showed up, and they were experiencing these knockings, and everyone was walking around the house. Nobody could find anything. And so then they would invite people over, and they would talk to the spirit, and they would say, like, what do you have to say? And this is the origination of the Ouija board, because they were like, well, how do we communicate with them? So they would say, like, knock once for yes, and then silence for no. And so that's where it started, was just one knock. And then they upgraded to the alphabet, and they said, okay, we're going to go through the alphabet one letter at a time. So spirit, what's your name? And then they would say A, B, C, and then they'd hear a knock. And then they'd have to start the alphabet over again. A, B, C.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's how they started. And then somebody was like, let's make it this a little easier. And then
let's speed this up a little bit. Yeah.
Exactly. So they came up with the seance. They basically toured. They went around all of New York. They would go to other people's homes. They would have people come to them, and they would just have a physical session, like physical phenomenon would happen. Knockings. They would have music play. They would have tables tip. It was called table tipping. People would levitate. And so, like, as I'm reading and learning all of this, the skeptic in me is like, this is bullshit.
I was going to say, it sounds like a circus.
And I mean, you kind of find out later that a lot of people started to take advantage of it. And they literally had a magazine where they sold ectoplasm. Ectoplasm was just cheesecloth, that they would like pull out of their shirt. Like,
wow.
You know what I mean? Not everyone.
Yeah.
I do think there was a lot of mediums back then probably doing it and not getting attention for doing it the right way. But eventually, that's why the whole idea of seances are so kind of like frowned upon now, is all those bad eggs that did it and tried to make shit happen. And they would literally turn on the lights, and then you see this guy back here with like a pulley, like, pulling a ghost sheet. Like,
and I'm sure Hollywood didn't help with that either.
No.
Because those scenes are always crazy, and it's like,
and it's surprising to me because physical mediumship is just not around anymore. And I'm like, why?
Is there any physical like mediums that are?
They're here and there. I've tried to like track them down because I wanted to take a class and just see.
Yeah.
But I've had a really hard time finding them. And so it just begs the question, like, what's different?
Yeah.
What's
what changed? Why is that not a thing anymore?
Yeah.
Did all the tricks get found out or something? They're like,
maybe
there's nowhere.
Well, we were talking about video cameras and stuff, right? And how like people really don't want, you said you were at a physical medium session, right? But they didn't want any cameras, and they were in a box. Was that the same thing?
It wasn't like a physical seance, but it was more that the person leading it was like, this could happen. You could see ectoplasm, and he kind of described it as like a haze across people's faces, which is, again, not the traditional sense. But I mean, they said we might have physical phenomenon happen. And every time I went to one, I don't think anything happened. But
what do they say after nothing happens? Or just like
well, it's more mental. So usually what it is like either the main medium is reading everybody in the group or everyone is allowed to participate.
so it's just like, warning, this could happen.
Yeah.
Likely not, but
yeah. Pretty much.
If a dark cloud
yeah.
forms on Austin's face.
Don't worry, it's just cheesecloth.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go make some mozzarella with it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So I want to talk about demons, all right?
Actually, can we, to preface that,
yeah.
I don't know if this is an inappropriate question to ask. I feel like we're all pretty open here, but do you believe in a higher power and God?
I believe in it in a very different way. I don't know. I mean, maybe a lot of people agree with me, but I really see it as we are the higher power. Like at the end of this, I don't know what happens, but it's like we all go back into being God ourselves. And right now we're God split up. We're split into many versions of ourselves experiencing life.
I think
Does that make sense?
No, there's a word for it. I think it's called pantheism.
I don't know.
Like everything in the natural world is God. Like,
so everything is divine.
Yeah, essentially.
So animals, the earth, planets, we're all no different. We're all divine beings.
Yeah. So like
from a divine source.
Past lives, for example, I don't believe in individual like souls necessarily. I believe we could technically connect to any past life and it would feel like ours, if that makes sense.
Right, because we're from the same source.
Yeah, it's all of our lives.
Interesting. So versus like reincarnation.
Yeah,
where like a soul's incarnating over and over again. Yeah.
Up leveling each time. I don't.
Right. Where you can remember your soul's specific past life.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, I will say that's not every psychic's belief. That's just mine. But,
right.
Yeah.
But then, segueing into the demons.
Let's talk about negative entities. With that belief, what is your, like, do you think that the universe is inherently good and evil is something that we created, or is evil just as divine as good, I guess is there a duality, you think, or like what's your take on evil?
Yeah, I feel like, and again, this is from my own personal experiences and maybe I've been exposed to very different things, but I don't necessarily believe in such black and white thinking. I really see almost everything as a spectrum. And like, I feel like even if we think it's so evil, I think there was conditions that, happened to create that trauma or create that illness or whatever it is that happened. And even if it's a really negative spirit, it could just be a spirit that's really like, I don't want to say stuck, but who's been through some stuff, and if you are attracting that, maybe you're going through some stuff as well. That's not so good. So I don't believe in demons. And I've been doing this work for almost 10 years now. And I think I'm good. I haven't been possessed. Come across any demons.
Have you ever come across a client who felt that they were maybe afflicted by something like that?
Yeah, sometimes they would really feel like, they had something attached to them. And I always would just go straight into like empowering them. Like you can protect yourself. Everyone can protect themselves. Like if you give away that power, then yeah, you might be inviting stuff in, but you can always reset. I think there's a quote from like Practical Magic that there's this guy or the main love interest. He says something to the effect of like, that's why curses don't affect me is I don't believe in them. And so I acknowledge that maybe I'm gaslighting myself here. Maybe I'm choosing not to believe because I'm a little scared, but it works. I'm not experiencing any of that energy because of it. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think about that?
We always bring this up because whenever we've talked about demonic possession and exorcism cases, it's always people of the belief, that believe in that.
Yeah.
You never see like an atheist who's like, I'm demonically possessed.
Yeah.
And he goes and seeks out a exorcist, and the exorcist is like, yep, this is something demonic. You know what I mean?
It's a lot of Catholics.
A lot of Catholics. Yeah. And even the Catholics are like, we don't believe in that.
We need to tone it down. Even the Vatican, it was like, okay, come on, let's tone this down.
The exorcists are few and far between these days, it seems like. And even modern exorcists, like we got reached out by a modern exorcist who I'm forgetting her name at the moment, but she is non-denominational, but she calls herself an exorcist, but it's very much, you know, in the sense of whatever negative energy, you know, she's there to help you figure out how to cleanse that and get rid of it, no matter your religious belief. So if you are Catholic and you go to see her, she'll employ those beliefs and tools to help you, if that's what you're dealing with. And just depending on the circumstance, she approaches it from a bunch of different ways, which I thought was very interesting. Kind of this modern take on it. But yeah, I think demons is always something that I try to forget about, and I try to push out of my mind, but it's been so deeply rooted inside my psyche that I'm like, will I ever be able to completely cleanse myself of that belief? And also the belief of hell and there being this place that I could go to when I die. So like if somebody comes to you and, you know, they're like, I'm very fearful about, you know, relieving myself of these beliefs, and like, because I'm worried that I'm going to make a mistake and potentially spend the rest of eternity in the place that I've been told my entire life I would go if I went away from this faith. Like how would you handle that with somebody?
Yeah, again, I always default to never telling people what my personal beliefs are, but that's where I encourage people to trust their own intuition of like, what do you feel? Like, I remember I had a reading once and this person came from another psychic and he was panicking and he was like, they told me I had demons on me and I'm going to hell and there's portals open everywhere and I can't go in my,
God.
you know, like whatever it was that was just stressing him out. And I was like, well, and I kind of encouraged him to talk about like what he believes. And I was like, do you really, you know, believe in this? And then like the more I got him talking, he was like, well, no, but she said that. And I was like, listen, not every psychic has the best intentions, you know? And so I encourage people to like trust their own gut. But then I also say, I really like using that quote from Practical Magic because it's like, look, even if I'm wrong, and even if these demons exist, isn't it better to just not acknowledge their existence and protect yourself anyway? And I think, you know, you can ask yourself these big questions and you can, you know, talk to your guides and, you know, ask these things of like, is there hell? And you can, you know, do meditations and shamanic journeys and try to answer those questions for yourself to see what you believe. I literally, when I did a shamanic course on death and dying, and that was like one of the first journeys we did was the teacher was like, all right, we're going to journey to the place that we go when we're dead. And I was like, okay, from the get-go, cool. Okay, sweet. And it ended up being like one of the most profound experiences I've ever had. And that's like where I base a lot of my beliefs. But, you know, that's my own experience. And so that's why I always encourage people to like, don't go to a psychic to figure out what to believe. You know, use your intuition and your psychic ability to figure out what it is that you believe. Yeah. So I know that's like throwing it back on people, but
it's like psychic coaching.
Yeah.
No, but I like that
versus
idea.
I have the answer.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I also like, it kind of plays into what you said earlier that's kind of stuck with me is that you just let people know like you have the tools to fight whatever this is that you're going through. I love that concept of like, no, you just need to kind of tap into something and figure this out. Rather than I think of the old school idea of if we're going back to possessions and demons and stuff, it's like, oh, you need to reach out to a man of the cloth who's certified by the church to like go through this. But I more like that idea of where you can just tap into something. You have the ability. So I like your philosophy on psychics and psychic abilities that we all can tap into something. We are all able to get through whatever afflictions. That's not to say, I'm not saying don't seek like medical doctors and stuff. I always do that. But like, I like that idea though, that we're in control and the onus is kind of on us.
I mean, I think unfortunately a lot of that religious rhetoric, you know, has kind of made it in our minds, like, oh, we don't have the ability. We're not allowed to protect ourselves. We got to go see somebody else to do that. And it's like, I've coached enough people over the years that I know they can always reel it back in. They can protect themselves. We talked about that wall being up, and sometimes if you are not aware that you don't have that wall and you're just letting anything and everything in, yeah, it can attract negative stuff, but that doesn't mean you can't reset it at any time. A lot of people come to me and they say, I'm being psychically attacked or somebody's cursed me. And I always say, like, okay, even if that's true, let's pretend it is, you can get rid of it. You can reset your energy. It's yours. And same with spirits. Like, if you are experiencing physical activity, you can tell them, no, get out of my space, because we are the ones living in this reality, not them. So we get first priority. We can always kick them out. We just have to believe that we can. If you have like any ounce of doubt there, I feel like it's a loophole for them to like get through and mess with your crap,
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
I've got a question. This is like, I don't know, I've been thinking very deeply on your philosophies here. So you mentioned that, you believe in, sounds like a divine energy to which we are all a part of, and that we are a representation of God, the divine, in our human form, and everything that's here is divine. So when we talk about spirits, how is it that spirits are coming in as individuals as opposed to just one divine energy source?
Yeah.
How is that being represented? Because to me, like, the way that I've always perceived it is they are, like, when you're connecting with spirits, you are in fact connecting with the soul of an individual that used to be alive on this planet, and now they're in whatever's on the other side, but they're still coming through as your grandmother, as your friend. You know what I mean? What do you have any thoughts like behind why that is, and why isn't it just like, well, I'm reading spirits, but it's all from one
super source,
mouth, so to speak,
exactly.
one voice. I'm not able to discern who it is. Why isn't it just all chatter versus like these specific individuals coming through? I hope that makes sense.
Okay. It does.
Yeah, I'm totally following. I think usually that's because it's what's most comfortable to us. And so they present themselves as what's most familiar. Like the best example I can give is like a lot of people believe in spirit guides. That can be literal. You have a saint following you, you have an angel, it's a mythical creature, whatever it is, a god or a goddess. And I don't think they actually have bodies. I don't think they don't have gender, they don't have race. Like, I really just perceive them as light, but that's really hard to connect to and like feel anything for. It's our limited,
for our monkey minds.
Yeah.
Like,
our tiny little human brain.
I need some physical form to think of.
It's the same reason why when people think of God, they think of the old man in the sky, right?
Yeah,
it's the same thing. It's like something familiar that we can latch ourselves onto, even though like really if you dig into at least the biblical concepts of God, he's just everything and everywhere, and it's not this manifestation of an old man, but it's just easier for us to connect to that.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
And put a picture on our wall.
Yeah. Of a white Jesus with straight hair. Yeah.
And build statues and things like that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the way that I look at it now is I walk out into nature and I'm like, this is
God.
Yeah.
This is God. This is my temple, my church, my whatever it may be, my sanctuary. And that's where I am usually able to feel most connected to the universal source of everything.
100%.
The divine is where it's probably the most divine, honestly.
Yeah.
It's like out there in nature and all of that. Sorry, but I wanted to hear the rest of your thoughts on that.
I mean, I really think that you're still technically connecting to that big one mouth, but it's just how we're perceiving it. It's more comfortable to see their personality that way. But I've noticed the longer that somebody has passed away, not all the time, but if it's been like 20 years since they've been around, I feel like their personality is really bland. Like, I feel like they evolve and move past it, especially animals. I feel like animals are so quick to move past like what they perceive. And it's hard sometimes because people want to connect with a relative, and I'm like, they don't feel like they're here, or they necessarily care about like what's going on here. I feel like they've moved on.
They're kind of dissolving into the ether.
And so that's really hard, because I'm like, do I tell people that they don't really care about what's going on in their lives anymore? Usually I try to give it with some grace, but yeah.
But that is a real reality, I would imagine.
Yeah, they probably got way bigger business on the other side if they're over there than dealing with our little human lives. So that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So do you feel like our lives are significant in the grand scheme? Sorry, I've been waiting for this opportunity. I need to like start a different podcast. It's just like Josh asked why.
Yeah.
Why me?
The big questions.
The big questions.
Yeah. I don't know how to answer that one. I mean,
that's all right. You know,
yes and no.
That was a crazy question.
Yeah, this is Lights Out Podcast episode existentialism. Do we matter?
Okay, let me bring it back to spirits, because I find spirits very interesting, and I want to talk about spirits because, you know, in covering a lot of hauntings, and you hear a lot of paranormal stories around spirits who have not been able to pass on or completely transition to whatever's next. And we've talked about this idea that sometimes a manifestation of a spirit could be almost like an energy imprint. So when they leave, like if they leave in a tragic way, or murder or something like that, the energy at that moment of death is imprinted. Their energy, soul, I don't know exactly what the term is for it, but it's something is imprinted there, which is then what's actually causing the paranormal experiences to happen. You know, some of the paranormal phenomena versus their soul's just trapped here in this plane, which is also a possibility. And we're actually seeing, you know, when people claim to see apparitions and shadows and things like that, that it's not actually the deceased person's spirit that's still lingering here, but rather an imprint that's just playing over and over again. Yes. Have you ever heard of that before?
It's called, sometimes I've heard it's called a vertical after image. I was just reading about this a little bit more because we have a future episode on this, but I also think of, we will get to your response. I don't want to totally cut you off, but yeah, the impression.
There's a term for it? Is that what the
vertical
term is?
after image is what one guy has called it, which I kind of really like that term. But yeah, it's basically just an emotionally charged after image of a spirit or whatever you want to call it. Because also, when you think about it, it is horrific to think that someone is trapped.
Right.
Like imagine someone whose family member has passed and you're like, oh yeah, there's a ghost in this house and it's this guy's grandma who's there forever now. That's such a terrible thing to say.
How do you deal with that if you're their family? Like,
right.
And then it's like, well, how do you release them? And, you know,
right.
Can they be released from this plane?
Yeah.
One of the great examples I have of that is that when I was studying to be psychic, I had already been kind of experiencing something in my home. And as I was going through that program, kind of opening up my abilities, I noticed there was a woman in our home and she kind of always hung out in our basement. And I always saw it like as like a fog or like a mist or smoke in one corner. And basically I felt like she was stuck at that time. I would have said that, or she's not crossed over is what a lot of people say. And then I think I went to a spirit circle, a seance, and I said, hey guys, like I've got this spirit in my home. Can we like help her move on? And so there's a lot of different techniques you can do to help them move on, but sometimes they don't take it. So I've done circles before where we set up a light and we invite them to walk through, and sometimes they're ready and sometimes they're not. And so that was an instance where we brought her in, and somebody else picked up on the fact that she might have had dementia. This was like a student group. And so she was stuck because she was confused. She didn't really understood that she had died. And so that's why she was stuck. But she walked through that light, and then I never heard from her again, which was nice because she was bothering me a lot. And but I've had other moments too, like my cousin committed suicide in 2020, and I've gotten permission to share his story. And when he passed, it was sudden. nobody understood why it happened. And I'm a psychic at that time. I'm a medium, and I'm tuning into him and trying to figure out where he's at. And he is like gray. He's black. The energy around him is dense. And so I would say he was stuck as well, but it was of his own decision. He was there reliving things, beating himself up. But there was a moment that he kind of switched into forward movement again. But it took him a while to kind of get out of his own story. So I think if they are stuck, they can always get out of it. But sometimes they're just reliving that. We can always help them, but I feel like we don't have to. We don't always have to help every spirit that we come across.
But some are able to work it out themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's really interesting. I'm sorry about your cousin. That's just so tragic.
He comes through a lot. Sorry, and just me talking about him.
Yeah, he's
here now.
picking up. Interesting. Yeah.
And I'm assuming you kind of helped your family get through that as well.
Sort of. I mean, I was obviously going through my own grief process at that time, so I kind of said like, "Hey, don't come to me. Go find somebody else." But they still kind of reached out. And I was legitimately happy to do it because it's like, this is why I learned it. I want to help people. But it was crazy too at his funeral. I was seeing him everywhere. Like I was getting him in my peripherals, and I kept seeing his face, and I even mentioned it out loud. And I had two of my other family members be like, "Oh my God, I keep feeling like I see him everywhere too." And so, anyways, another random story. But
wow. Yeah,
I think they can
imagine
heal.
to be that,
I think they can move on, but sometimes we can help them. Absolutely.
So
that's good to know.
It really seems like, based on everything I've heard from psychic mediums, is that, like, you know, I've always thought, is there a possibility that, you know, our individual, you know, makeup of who we are, personality, or our ego, whatever it is, still exists maybe briefly after death? And because it's back to that individual, you know, to be able to come back as an individual or to communicate with an individual. And especially when, I'm sure you've read people before, you're picking up on specific memories and specific items or characteristics that this spirit is sending you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very interesting to me, because I'm like, and maybe I just need to stop digging in so deep and like asking these questions. But I'm like, where is that being stored? What is that? It's just stored in this universal knowledge base that everybody's emotion, event kind of goes back to the Akashic records in a way, but maybe it's not set up like you said in the same type of way, but where, you know, these as individuals we're able to manifest in the afterlife. Or perhaps there's a transitionary period as well where we're still kind of retaining, you know, not our physical form, but our soul's form on this planet for a brief amount of time to allow us. But like you said, people communicate with people that passed 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that to me is very interesting, because I'm like, where is that coming from? Like, where is that being pulled from?
It's such a hard question to answer. And like, again, I'm always just open, and I let whatever comes through. I think one of the cool experiences that I had with this was I was reading somebody's dog who had passed. And I think she was asking me, like, is he going to reincarnate and come back into my life? And this dog was like, no, like, I'm done.
I'm good.
Yeah.
But I just asked because we were talking to him about it. Or no, I apologize. It was a cat. He's reminding me now. And this cat was showing me like a percentage. He was like, I'm going to come back, but I'm going to be 80% me and 20% of somebody else. And I was like, what? And that's when I kind of started to really understand maybe we're not so individual, you know, and maybe it's way more confusing than we think it is. And he was showing it to me like a lava lamp. It was so interesting, like of two different colors, and just something to think about, just to confuse you more.
No. Yeah, I think we have to all kind of accept, like, it's just probably far beyond our comprehension that as much as we can sit here and like think and try to like rationalize things and make it make sense in our insignificant brains, it's just like impossible. That's probably far more complex. But so what do you think about, so kind of going back to this idea, not idea, but evil as a whole, like do you think people are born evil? Do you think anybody's born inherently evil, or do you feel that people, yeah, you do?
You're looking at one. Yeah. I'm kidding.
It was kind of scary. Like, it's like, whoa. What do you think? Like, what do you think about it? Because that's a question we've asked here on this show before and dove into a bit, because I think it begs the question of like, why do we have, the evil people that we do? And like serial killers is one that we dove into before. Like, what is it that, makes somebody do such horrific things to another person? And is that something they're inherently born with that's always there, and they just finally tapped into it and, all these things happen? Or is it something that, because like there's a lot of examples of obviously serial killers who have traumatic things happen in their childhood. There's so many things from their past you can point to and be like, this was majorly impactful. This was majorly impactful. And it kind of makes sense for why they walked the path that they did. But then there's other individuals who have, to our knowledge, a fairly normal childhood, normal upbringing, perhaps even religious, and then all of a sudden one day that just goes off the rails and something flips, and people theorize all these different things as to what was it that made them all of a sudden go down this alternate path. Or is that like, and this could kind of lead into this idea of fate or destiny, and like like what are your thoughts on that?
That one's tough. I think that I'm diving into astrology pretty heavily right now, and astrology is definitely this big question of how much is fated, and what you're talking about is partial determinism versus complete determinism. And I think most people kind of feel like we have free will to some extent, and that's what partial determinism is. Whereas complete determinism is like, no, every single little thing you do is fated. And I'm not going to get down the astrology rabbit hole, but it's like crazy impressive to me the more that you learn.
Oh, it is. I try to tell these guys all the time. And people will rip me apart for this, but I am a major believer in astrology for myself. And I've had my whole chart done, and everything was like to a T, and things that about my personality and my inner self were like, so accurate. And,
exactly.
And maybe even some things I don't know about myself yet. Cause I think a lot of people with astrology are like, well, this doesn't make sense for me. Mm-hmm. Or, a lot of people also don't know anything beyond a sun sign. You know what I mean? They don't know all the other planet placings and stuff. But anyways, not to get down the astrology rabbit hole, but about that all day. But this idea of like, in kind of circling back to evil, somebody born inherently evil, I think that's where that question comes in, right? Is our path predetermined, or do we have free will? And based on who you are and what your beliefs are, everybody's going to have a different answer, because we were taught that we have free will, that's why Christ died on the cross for us, for our sins, is so that we can have that inherent ability to make our own decisions and choose him, ultimately make the choice to choose him and follow in his likeness. And that's the way that we were designed. But if you don't believe in that, I think this idea of our past being predetermined is very interesting. And you could even go as far out into like simulation theory, what I mean? Where it's like, is this an artificial experience? Which would be very sad for you, because I'd be like, what? No.
I go off of my intuition and my experiences and my readings. And most of the time I feel like we do have free will, but I pick up on things sometimes where it's like, this is just gonna happen. It, like, no matter what you do, it's going to happen. And so that always confused me, because I'm like, how do I explain this to people? And so I'm kind of like in the boat of, there's partial determinism. There's things that are fated, that are destined, but there's also a lot of room for free will. But again, like, if you ask me in a couple years, I might give you a different answer. And so when it comes to like, are people born that way? I feel like I'm more of an optimist, and I'm like, I think we're all born, and maybe this is just because I'm a mom too. And I'm like, they're perfect. There's nothing absolutely wrong with them. But again, I might not have been exposed to certain stories. And the stories where it's like that switch gets flipped and it just doesn't make sense. If I would always look towards, being skeptical first, like, is there trauma there? Is there mental illness there? Like, is there something that could explain this away? And then if not, is there an outside influence that's affecting this? But I don't know. Again, I'd like to believe that there's no evil and that everyone is born this way and it's just a condition of being here and living this life, and that's the journey that they're on, for better or worse.
It's a healthy way to look at it too, because I think you're more open to just accepting how things change or how you go through hardships. It's just like, once you accept that there are certain things out of your control, it's humbling, I think. So it's a positive way to look at it, but also
we're all light.
Yeah, there you go.
Don't let your light be dim.
Yeah, amen.
At the end of the day.
But really, I like that because it's like, I think someone could spin it as nihilism, like nothing matters. We're just in a path of it's all predetermined.
It's a scary thing to think about.
But I think it's also, once you consider it, it's like, yeah, I can be more open to accepting what things are happening to me in this moment. It just, things happen.
I mean, that's the hardest part about being psychic, is people want me to tell them their futures. And they're like, what's going to happen? Am I going to get with this person?
It's always that.
And it's like, there's room for, I don't know. There's so many different paths you could go on. The hardest question that I have is like, what's my purpose?
Oh,
it's like, you have so many purposes. And even me telling you, you might not resonate with that. And there might be something else that resonates with you more. And it's just,
The psychic threw me a curveball at the end. She was just like, screw it, I'm probably never going to see this guy again. So she ran some cards. She's like, you're going to cross paths with 2 of your exes in the next 2 months, and then you're going to be with a single mom.
Wow, that definitely didn't happen.
Within 3 years. Yeah, none of that's really lined up.
What single moms have you been with?
None. But none yet. But the crazy part is, right after that psychic session, I went out with friends, and sure enough, at the bar we were at, one of my exes entered the bar. And then for a hot second, I was like, what? That's crazy. She just said I would cross paths, but that was the only thing that lined up, was that one moment.
Well, and I want to say this too, psychics can be wrong. And, if any psychic is out there saying that they're 100% right, 100% of the time, again, red flag.
Yeah. Who's ever 100% right 100% of the time?
It drives me nuts. I went to
Jesus. No, seriously.
I don't know. He did
in human form. Well, they do say he lived a perfect life as a human.
Christ did have the doubt in the Garden of Gethsemane.
That's true.
He doubted God for a moment.
I've heard some other theories too. That
depending on which faith you're coming across, sometimes people point out. Now I'm talking about Jesus, but
sorry, that was my fault.
But they do say he doubted God and his plan in the Garden of Gethsemane. So maybe Christ isn't perfect. Who knows?
No,
people are going to be pissed I said that.
No, I think you're right though, and I think there's this expectation that if you claim to be psychic, then you must know everything. You know what I mean? It's kind of
right.
But it would make sense that no, there's no way I could possibly be perfect, because I'm doing something that is difficult and takes work. You know what I mean? And I think it's a lot of misunderstanding, a lack of education around it, of like, it's not just this like bona fide gift. Maybe it is for some people, but like, it's something that has to be worked on. It has to be trained. Like if you were to stop it for 10 years and just stop reading people, stop learning about it and did your very best to just like, or maybe you took up another religion and got heavily involved in that. Like, obviously you couldn't come back 10 years later and be like, oh yeah, let me pick up where I left off. Right.
Exactly.
Or so it would be like, you'd have to kind of retrain it again.
And I mean, it might be faster for some, it might be slower for others. It's just variable. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lack of understanding most of the times when it comes to psychics and the abilities. I know for me, that was definitely the case for a long, long time. I wanted to ask you too, because we love asking guests about this. Could you connect with an extraterrestrial, somebody like psychics can connect, or mediums can connect with people from the other side, but what would stop somebody from being able to connect with somebody perhaps in a different part of the universe, or perhaps even a different, I mean, if you want to get really trippy with it, talk about different planes of existence and interdimensional beings and entities and things like that. Because I mean, if you look at what consciousness is, and ultimately we're using our consciousness to tap into these abilities, and they're all in the same, same universe. So do you think it's possible or have you connected with extraterrestrial or something or somebody from a different plane of existence or planet or something?
I mean, in theory, it should work, right? You're using your abilities to connect, and it's just, who are you connecting to? And I think we were talking about it earlier, the CE5 groups. That's kind of like their whole idea, is that the way that you connect to them is through your conscious and getting into a meditative state. And so in theory, yeah, you should be able to talk to them. You should be able to answer any question that you have. As far as me and if I've done it, again, I'm a little new to ET stuff. Like, I feel like if you, again, asked me 5 years ago, I would have laughed. But after watching some stuff, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe we aren't alone. And I think I was actually prepping for this because you guys sent me some questions ahead of time. And I was like, I don't know if I would know how to answer that. So I just really quick reached out, and it was like, bam, one showed up in my living room. Kind of scared the shit out of me.
What?
So, yeah, like not literally, in my mind's eye, psychically.
Yeah,
kind of showed up.
What was it?
It was like some alien, and he was like, yeah, we're real. And I was talking to multiple people. I had the Fox sisters show up too. Ever since I've been researching them, they have been following me around. And who else was there? My grandpa was there also. So I was
this is like a party going on here. It's like, this is sweet.
I mean, even right now, there are like several things in this room. So like, I have to like tune in and manage all the conversations,
Can you reveal anything you've picked up here? Annabelle?
Is this a bad idea? Am I calling out with this or no?
No, I mean, as long as you're like, again, protecting the space, like.
I don't know if we're doing that.
I mean, and protection can be as simple as just saying something out loud. Like, this space is protected.
Yeah.
Only beings of my highest and best good can be here.
You hear that, Annabelle?
Yeah.
The space is protected.
Annabelle is one of those that I'm just going to take a second here. I'm trying to figure out, I think she's somebody that, like, I often talk about like places that are haunted because people say that they're haunted, but they're not actually haunted. It's that everyone is setting a general intention. Oh, there's ghosts here. And so what they do is they kind of manifest that energy. And so you might tune into it and you're like, this feels creepy. This feels weird. And there might literally be activity that's happening. Side story that kind of proves this is like, we had to do construction on my home earlier this year. Like, my foundation on my porch fell. It was just a mess. We had all sorts of people in and out around the house, just chaos. And of course, I have all this physical activity happening at the same time. Like at home, after everyone's left, doors getting turned, things falling off the walls. I literally was walking in my basement, light fell down. Like our little sconce light fell down. And I'm just like, whoa, I know I protect my home. I talk to people all the time. I got to keep it safe. And I was like, what is going on here? And it was that the chaos of the construction was just like messing with everything, and it was attracting spirit. So anyway, I think that, spaces can be haunted just by pure group intention, but there might not actually be like a singular soul entity, and so like she feels the same way. Like, I wonder if you guys have said enough that she is a being.
We've kind of like manifested something in her.
Well, no, I take that back. I don't know. Because I am getting like an actual little girl around it. Let me just, sorry. I guess we're reading now.
No, go for it. I'm curious.
Yeah, because somebody's been coming in and out of that door.
It's not my dog, is it?
No.
He likes to bust in and out.
There's a man, and then you've got somebody with you.
Oh, I was wondering if this person was gonna.
I don't think it's a person. I think it's a guide.
Oh.
And then I've got like my own spiritual team here as well.
You got a team?
I got a team.
I want a team.
You probably have a team. I'll tune into you in a second, but it's like a small like creature on your shoulder. And I'm trying to like. I think it's like a bird of some kind. And spirit guides can be animals.
You got like a pirate parrot up there.
No, it's crazy you say that because I have a.
Shut
Oh.
And this is what I believe is my spirit animal.
There you
Shut
go.
up.
Literally, you said a bird on my shoulder, and there's a freaking owl on my shoulder.
See,
There you go.
I wish I would have said it because mine is an owl. And
Really?
he's been like, I kind of asked him to like sit on my shoulders to protect me. But I was like, oh, well, maybe that's mine. And I'm picking up on mine. And so again, that's where like psychics, not always right, but that's crazy to me. Okay. Well, he's definitely with you.
Wow.
The man that keeps coming in is somehow associated with one of your podcasts, one of your stories.
Oh, no.
Alistair?
No.
It might be. It might be.
God, I hope not. Because
tall,
I don't know, I feel like he does come in sometimes.
tall, bald.
Nosferatu looking guy.
I'm getting like old, like Dust Bowl era. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
Hmm.
I have to start scrolling my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And that could be.
None that come to mind.
It's interesting though, because it's definitely just to this room. Anyways, yeah, just doing a quick scan. That's like immediately what I get. I got one of the Fox sisters with me as well. But yeah, I can go wherever you want with that.
Yeah, no, I have a family member who passed in the last 2 years, and this person was extremely influential in my life, and I was very connected to her in life, and I've always wondered if they're there, you know, with me, and just I'm curious because I've been lucky and haven't had a lot of family members pass in my lifetime, but this one was very, very important to me, and they always believed in like reincarnation and all that. So I was just curious if anybody was coming through for me.
I'm kind of calling her in because that's something we can do if they're not always in the room with us. We can just ask him to step in. I'm not sure if this is the same person, but like she walked in this door. They all come through this door, I think. And but they're not in the rest of your space, I will say. The rest of your space is really clean. And she's like throwing flowers. I feel like she just said, "I'm here, bitch."
Wow.
Was she like life of the party? I'm getting blonde. I could be totally wrong.
She's definitely a lively person. I don't know, maybe like dirty blonde.
Okay.
I'd have to look at it. She could have been earlier in her life. I'm trying to recall what she looked like when she was younger. But
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, what's louder right now to me is like one of your other guides. But she's just saying go with it. Okay. Yeah, so I'm watching her walk around you. For some reason, she has a magic wand, and she's like sparkling things over you, and I'm like, are we sure this is the same person? I don't feel like this is her personality. Okay. I think she's trying to like be funny. I had this happen once with like a spirit, and he like came in like, and he was pretending to be Jesus. Like he was holding something and like, I'm Jesus. Ha ha ha. Were you childhood friends with her?
No.
Okay. I must be just connecting to the wrong one.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it was my grandmother. I was curious to see if
Your grandmother.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was curious if she might come through because she was the most recent family member to pass that I was very close with, and
I see. Okay. I mean, I'll be honest, like she wasn't here before. I think it's too noisy and too loud. And I know that that's an easy excuse for a medium to make, but yeah, there's another woman though that is around you that feels like a childhood friend. You also have like a guide that like looks to me Dark Crystal. Have you watched that movie? No. He almost look, and maybe it's for Austin, but there's somebody that's like, what are those animals? They're like the scary bird things with really sharp beaks, and they look terrifying. Yes, Skeksis.
Let me
Yeah.
look one of these up. Haven't watched it since I was a kid.
Yeah, that's somebody's guide. Even though they're terrifying, they're
damn.
good. Whoever this is for is good.
So what can you do with a guide?
Mm.
How do you, do you speak with them or?
Yeah. You usually ask them for information, use them kind of like, hey, what do I do next? Answer those bigger questions that you have. Usually I just use them to help me navigate, to make choices, make decisions. Again, talk to relatives that have passed away. It's just this idea that you have people looking out for you. You know, you have a spiritual team, just like, you know, in religion, you know, in Catholicism or Christianity, like you have God looking out for you. You have angels looking out for you. It's the same idea.
Concept.
Yeah. And you might have angels following you, you know, and you might see that higher power as God, you know.
Your spirit team, if you don't mind sharing, like what does yours look like?
So I have an owl, and that owl has came through since like day one. I also have a deer that is also like a woman. And I found out that later down the line that there's actually an Irish, or maybe it's Scottish goddess named Ellen of the Ways. And she often appears as a deer. So that's one of mine. I have one that I will just say is like a fictional character. And that one is kind of confusing because some people will see fictional characters as guides, but it's like you resonated with that guide or that fictional character for a reason. And again, because these spirits don't have form, I think they can kind of take on like whatever we want them to.
Can we find them ourselves, or do we need a psychic to present those? You know, people go see psychics, find out my spirit animal, or a shaman for that or something like that. Or is it something that we can discover on our own?
Yeah, you absolutely can. I mean, that's that psychic ability. You can discover it. I feel like you somehow already discovered yours.
I actually have both of what I believe are my spirit guides, spirit animals in my office. I have pictures of them. Like
nice.
I feel like I have the owl, and then I have the wolf. Like this is like, you know, this is like my internal sort of guide, and this is my external guide.
Interesting. Okay.
In a way, like,
yeah,
I don't know. It's kind of, there's kind of this dual, I don't know. So I have a dual personality. I don't know. I've been told I do at times. So
your wolf in owl's clothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, and I have, let's see.
Have you ever thought about that? What your spirit animal would be?
No. I mean, I know what I would want it to be. I don't know if I've ever accessed it. I hope it's a dog.
Yeah.
I feel like that's pretty.
You can always invite them in. Like, you can ask like a god, goddess, deity, like, hey, I want to work with you. You know, can you show me a sign that you want to work with me? You can just invite them in and ask
Really?
them. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that, you know, going back to that, whatever that character is, I think it's actually for you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to look this up. Daniel, how do you spell that? Skeksis. Okay, got it.
And I can go back and read.
I didn't realize they could be fictional. This opens up a whole new realm of what it can be.
Well, I think some people have like unicorns as their spirit guides, or mermaids, and obviously, well, some people will probably argue with me that those are real, but you know, in some sense of the word, they aren't, and in this reality. And so again, they're not bound to any form. You can also have family members. So I have like my grandfather that often comes through. Again, like my cousin only comes through when like I'm dealing with people who have like addiction or, you know, suicide. He always comes through, and it's really easy for me to know because it's like, oh, he's here to help. But yeah, you can also have family members as well.
Man, so mine's a Skeksis. Too bad I don't want this thing tattooed on.
I was going to say, dude, we're going to get that tattooed on you.
Part reptile, part predatory bird, part dragon.
I actually like that for you. That's
maybe my spirit animal is actually Jim Henson. It's just the Muppet dude. Hell yeah.
Yeah, I've always been interested in, because like, you know, growing up, it was, you know, the feeling of God is looking out for me, or, I never, it's interesting because I was never really taught, like, you always hear the guardian angel, and I don't know that I ever felt like I had a guardian angel per se, and maybe I just wasn't able to connect with it. But, I definitely felt like there was something always looking over me, and it was primarily out of fear for a while. But I know I've had different moments in my life where I have an intuition that something bad is about to happen, and it could just be like literally as dumb as I locked my keys in my car.
Yeah.
Because I have this memory of like walking back out of a store. I think I was like 16 or something, and I was like, oh my God, I locked my keys in my car. And I was like, I for sure locked them in there. And I walked back to the car, and I hadn't actually locked the car, and my keys were still there. But I remember saying something to myself of like, please, if you're out there, can you unlock the car for me? And like, again, I could have just left my keys and not locked the car and walked away. But in that moment, I was like, well, maybe something was looking out for me and saved me a phone call to my parents telling me, come get me. So I don't know. For me, I try to, whenever big decisions come up, because one of the things that I've struggled with in the past is impulsivity in my life is like definitely one of the toughest things for me, because I like to move very quickly and I make decisions very quickly, but sometimes I don't stop long enough to think through those decisions. I'm moving a million miles an hour, but sometimes I've made poor decisions because I didn't stop to think about the ripple effects of those decisions. And so, sometimes I'll stop and take that time to really like connect and think through those things. I'm trying to get better and better at doing that, but kind of allowing myself and opening myself for, whatever to connect with, to come through and do that. And not necessarily saying like, I am looking for something to speak to me and be like, Josh, this is what you need to do. But more so just like letting my higher self come through and connect. And that's kind of how I've always looked at it, is like, it's my higher self. It's still me, but it's just a higher level of consciousness that I can only tap into, which I want to ask you, hopefully we're not running out of time here, but I wanted to ask you about something that I feel has aided me throughout my journey towards the divine is psychedelics.
I knew you were going to bring this up.
Of course. Because I feel that I have gotten closest to the divine when using psychedelic substances. I don't know if you've ever taken psychedelics before, but they honestly have helped me in so many ways to become more open, and to it shatters the ego, and it also kind of shatters reality a little bit, and it helps you kind of look at things through a different lens. And you almost get this like third person point of view on your life, where you can like look at it a little bit more subjectively, where you're like, okay, why am I doing these things? And so I'm curious, like, have you ever used psychedelics to like and tap in when you're on them and see how that experience differs? Or do you know anybody that has? I'm always curious about that.
Yeah, it's pretty popular in a lot of communities, like especially even ayahuasca. That's like the whole point. But as far as like, I even went to my shamanic courses, and people asked the same question of my teacher, and my teacher was like, no, you should be able to connect no matter what, and you shouldn't need psychedelics. And I think there's a time and a place for it. And I haven't done like psychedelics. The most I've done is just marijuana or drinking, but it totally drops that like wall that we were talking about earlier. And so it's kind of helpful, and it does help you connect. Like, I won't lie. But what's hard about it is that you can become reliant on it, also addicted, to some extent for some people. And it's kind of like the tools of like using tarot cards or using a Ouija board. You start to use it as a crutch,
right?
Which is, again, not everyone. Everyone knows their own limits and stuff like that. But I think that they can be helpful because they drop that like inhibition and that ability to connect. And so they can be helpful, but at the same time, like I try not to encourage it because I don't want people, taking the wrong direction with it.
Yeah, well, and they're not
fair.
for everybody too.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm not saying that, and this
For
purely
sure.
my personal experience with them. Because I think for me, the biggest benefit I received was being able to wipe the slate clean.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And be able to completely remove everything I've ever been taught or told and see it, like I said, see life through a different lens, which enabled me to be more open and grounded and feel more connected to, I feel, the divine, and that being nature, and that's why I have a certain ritual in which I do them too. I don't just like go to an EDM show and like take a bunch of psychedelics. I know people do that, and kudos to you. I could never do that. It'd be too overwhelming. But for me, that
sounds like my nightmare.
Yeah, seriously. Like for me, it's very much a ritual that involves nature. And oftentimes I prefer to do them by myself because I find that if I'm with other people, it can be very distracting and almost like pull me out of like where I'm trying to go.
Yeah.
And so I use it as a tool as well. It's like a tool to help me reset is the way that I kind of look at it. Is like I do it not very often, especially since I'm a parent now, and I do it when I feel I need that reset. I need that cleanse of like all the like day-to-day shit. I need that to like be flushed out and just be able to recenter myself and stay focused on why am I here and like my greater purpose and all of that. And I feel like those are the moments that I feel most in tune with probably all my spirit guides and and that psychic side of me that is still just a little bitty psychic over here,
little baby.
But it's interesting that I love the approach, and I want to shout this from the mountaintops that this is something we all possess. There's not the people that are going around being like, this is just my thing, I'm the psychic, you don't know anything. I can't stand that perspective. I think it's
very elitist,
furthering the narrative, the stereotypes that people think of. And I think as we go forward, and I'm sure for our kids, right? Like we want to teach them. And I think things are changing, which is great. And I think the next generation is more open sometimes. Other times, not so much, but I'm hoping that this will become more and more, not as stigmatized, and people are more open to it. And the message that you're spreading is heard by more people, because I think if there's any message that I think holds the most truth, I think it's that we are all capable of this. We all have this ability. It's just a matter of putting in the work to really fine tune it, and to become good at anything else in life, you've got to put that time and energy into it for it to really prosper and become something really great. And then I like your angle of I'm here to help other people too. Because obviously people are going to be like, well, psychics are just scammers that are, they're just here for the money, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, if some psychics I'm sure probably are there for the money, but it's like, I can think of a lot of other ways to scam people out of money. You know what I mean? It
requires so much energy.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So like, what do you, I'm sure you've had people call you, have you ever had anybody call you like you're a scammer, or you're trying to say that you're like taking advantage of people or something? Like, how do you deal with the haters, I guess?
Not directly, like nobody that
like to your face.
Nobody that spent money, whatever, say that to me. I mean, it's mostly like YouTube comments or something like that. But
Shocker.
But I mean, it's actually, I will say, like, because I do parties and I'll sit down and offer readings at parties, and sometimes people would sit down and they don't want a reading, they just want to fight with me. And usually I just try to be very neutral, and I'm like, I'm not here to convince you. Like, if you want to learn, I'm happy to talk about it. But you can tell that threshold of like, they're not going to listen. And so I just sit there and kind of validate them. I used to, once upon a time, try to push my beliefs and like really be like, no, you got to believe what I believe. But I found out that never works. So I try to just think of like, look, I'm representing all psychics here. And so I want, what's the saying? Like, rising tides lift all boats.
Yeah.
If I can teach people to be ethical and smart with it, and again, like destigmatize this, then more people will start seeing psychics less as this just like ridiculousness,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think it's tough because I think a lot of people, especially in this day and age, are very skeptical across the board about a lot of things. I mean, it could be from things they hear about in the news to, people are skeptical of the mainstream media to, I mean, like we're all, I feel like, getting more and more skeptical as time goes on. I think it's difficult to not be, because I think also we've discovered a lot of things that we thought were true were not in fact true. And I mean, you could even look at the whole, going back to aliens, this whole cover up of UFOs and stuff, they lied to us for years about that. So I think people are just kind of inherently skeptical. And I think inherently skeptical about things that are impactful or, could determine, the path you take in life. And I think a lot of people, same with religion, I think a lot of people are becoming more skeptical of their religious leaders. I mean, how often do we see religious leaders that are being exposed for heinous crimes and scandals left and right in churches across the world? And so I think we're all skeptical of being led and the people who are leading us. And I think it's very empowering to think, like, why do we need leaders? Why do we need somebody to lead us? Why can't we learn how to lead ourselves? And it takes work to do that. It's easier to be led by somebody, right? It's easier to sit back and be like, well, I'll just believe what this person's telling me and let them lead me, and no matter where it goes. But I think it's a whole other thing to look at yourself and be like, I can lead myself. I just have to put in the work to do it. And I think knowledge, like as you said, you continue to learn and grow and evolve in it's not like you're over here like, I've hit peak psychic. My psychic ability is God mode. You know what I mean? And I don't know if any psychic could ever, like, is that even a attainable level? Do you think there's an attainable level where you'll be like, I can't get any more connected?
I think when we die, yes. But otherwise, there's always going to be something in the way. There's a lot of people that think, oh, well, I'm going to try to remove these blocks to my abilities and I'll get into it and, I won't have to ever do it again. And I'll just be this perfect, clean and clear channel. And it's just like, all right, we have to remember we're human, and I think, to what you're saying, it's like, I think that's why it's so important that we need to develop these abilities. Maybe not to become psychic or read your friends necessarily, but even if you just have this knowledge of how to trust your intuition, I even would argue like with AI and where we're going with AI, like being able to discern what's real, what's not. At the end of the day, we could listen to what everyone else tells us to believe. But I think that's why we're seeing such a movement of people moving away from organized religion, is that they want to learn for themselves. They want to know what they believe without having somebody else tell them what to believe. And I would argue that that's your intuition. It's just developing that. So I think that's, again, all the more reason to develop it in today's day and age. Also to just like, to what you said of like getting out in nature and like grounding, it's so hard for so many people to do. And even if like it helps us relax and de-stress and figure out how to live a more guided life, I think that's power enough in that,
Yeah. Is there, I'm curious, I'll probably wrap it up here pretty soon. I mean, we could go on and on. I could talk to you all day, probably. I could go down whatever rabbit hole you want to go down. Was there anything else or any other stories that you wanted to share that you can think of?
I'm not happy with my reading.
I was gonna say if we can just hang out here for a little bit. And no, I know this, and this is what I tell people too, is like, this isn't exactly like optimal environment, right? Especially if you already are nervous inherently from having cameras and stuff and just kind of on the spot versus like a normal session be one-on-one away from cameras, where you can.
Away from Annabelle staring straight into your soul.
I mean, we can just hang out here if you want to just see whatever. I'm totally fine with that. Yeah.
But other than that, I don't think there was anything else.
Okay.
No.
Cool. I feel like we covered the freaking spectrum of
the world over. Yeah.
Let me actually get into
Yeah, no
I think part of it is too is that you really got to get into like reading mode, and when I'm talking and chatting about this stuff, I'm in teaching mode. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That makes sense. Well, no pressure. I mean, you don't have to produce anything here.
I'm just actually like inviting them into the space, setting the attention. I think we just have a lot of people in here, and so even out there, stuff comes through. Because I wonder if that girl is like for somebody that was out there. But I just like, I felt like a crystal ball just like slammed on the table, which is kind of interesting. Like psychically, I see things and I hear things. Okay. And we have a guide that wants to introduce herself. She's wanting me to lead you guys through this. Okay. So I'm picking up on a spirit. This is for Josh. But she's encouraging you, Josh, to find where she is in this room. And maybe I know where she is, and I want to see if we're the same.
Kind of was feeling like this side of the room over here.
I think she's
like kind
here.
of like this corner area over here.
She's testing you. Okay. So let me tell you what I'm getting first. She's kind of scary. You guys, and I mean, this doesn't surprise me because the nature of what you guys do.
Yeah.
This is Hecate. This is Hecate is technically how you pronounce it.
Hecate?
Hecate. Okay. It's so funny to me that you have this Christian background because whenever Hecate shows up, she's like witchcraft.
Interesting.
And I think that she's showing me you like in nature, connecting to that energy. And she's calling you like a witch or wizard is what we would say. And this might be like 5-10 years down the line, but you're connecting through plants, through animals. You see that. She's like, this is what she's telling me. And she's trying to say like, you're doing that same thing. And she knows you're going to like take some time to come around to her, but she's like, I'm here. You also have a guide, Odin. Have you ever messed around with runes?
That's interesting. Both of those things actually resonate. I actually think that's so weird. And I'm always like drawn to those types of archetypes in games as well.
Interesting.
Both of those. That's so interesting.
I mean, Odin is telling me that you've connected to him before. And I'm going to say what he's saying. He's like, you see me as God. Like there can be this male energy that you connect to that's very similar to what you used to connect to. He's like, but I'm the good kind. I'm not the bad one. Like, I'm not the one that you associate with this other stuff. Okay. And then I just got drawn back to this crystal ball, and I feel like we have several beings. Again, it's from your shows. Like, I think you probably naturally just call them in when you talk about them.
So that's a thing then.
Yeah. Because one of them is speaking, and he's like, I've got a bone to pick with you guys.
Oh, no.
What does he have to say?
It's that same guy.
If I had to take a guess, just based on our experience, it would have to be Aleister Crowley, because every time we do an episode and we say his name, something happens in here. We have a physical movement or physical change to our microphones, like stuff that only has happened when this person's name is mentioned. Like when we call out to him, he answers every time. Maybe, but it could be, I mean, we cover a lot of different males, but I feel like if there was one name that we repeatedly knock for, it'd be him, which is kind of scary to think about if he's here and he has a bone to pick with us. Like,
I mean, and I asked what the crystal ball meant, because I never assume when I see symbols like that. And they said, like, look, you guys are bringing in people. They're kind of giving you some like tough love right now. They're like, you're bringing in people. You're speaking on their behalf. My guys are saying they're like fighting with each other, to be honest. They're saying that you guys do it and you do it with integrity. And like this guy, this specific guy is like, you got like one little sentence wrong. Like you got one little thing off about him and he's mad.
Damn.
That's what it is.
He's a YouTube commenter.
That's Austin's fault.
Yeah, and I'm asking him to leave because I don't think he's being very beneficial. To me, I wouldn't worry too much about him. He kind of likes the attention, I think, actually.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like.
And and Austin, like, I feel like it's funny because I try not to like judge people by how they look, and I feel like I'm getting like fairies around you.
Really?
Yes.
That's awesome, actually. That's
interesting.
it's very like Shakespearean. Can I get some fairies?
Well, and
A Midsummer's Night's Dream.
because like literally I saw like they laid out a path. What direction is this? They're saying this direction is important.
That's west.
That's west. Okay. And they're leading you, they're inviting you in to learn more about them. The Fae are kind of this huge conglomerate, and I know people are going to come after me because they say they're dangerous to work with.
Really?
But again, protection. If you know how to protect yourself, none of them are going to like bother you, is my opinion.
West, you say?
Yeah, what is this? It's something about the element. Isn't west water? I should know this. But it's also the mountains. It's about connecting with them in nature. Like I keep seeing you as a kid, and you are definitely into like the movies, the mythical creatures. Like I feel like you actually really, really believed in a lot of that, and you wanted it so badly to be true.
I did have a pretty active imagination as a kid.
And then is it dad? Then I should have said, if you don't want me to read into anything, please stop me.
No.
Like I'm getting your dad, and like I'm seeing like little kid version of you just like being enthralled. Power Rangers, maybe? Were you like a big Power Ranger kid?
Yeah, my brother was more into it than I was, but with the costumes and everything.
That's cute. I mean, I'm seeing you with like that childlike wonder where you totally believed in the impossible, totally believed in magic. And you have a lot of, I think you were drawn to me talking about the fictional characters because you might have some. And now they're telling me that you might really get into that. I feel like you both might like share some of that like Nordic, that culture, that heritage. I feel like if you please go to like Scotland before you die, because I feel like you would really resonate with that place.
I have family in Scotland.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it's past life stuff then.
But yeah, I do love fiction.
Is there anything like picking up on for his future? Like,
single moms or anything like that?
Or is he, you see kids? Is there anything? Because we talk about that a lot together, and I know that's something that he definitely wants, right?
Yeah. As long as they don't turn out like me.
Well, so I hate to break it to you, man. They turn out
they're literally DNA is coded.
Hard coded in, man.
Are you dating somebody now? Are you with somebody? Or are you single?
Yeah, I have a girlfriend. Why?
I'm picking up on the energy of her. I just heard she doesn't want kids. Is that true?
No, she does want kids. Yeah.
Who's fucking with me right now?
I mean, I've struggled with the concept of kids for a long time because I didn't always want them.
Yeah.
They're loud, annoying.
But I've been selling you.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I keep getting pulled back over to Annabelle over here. And I wonder.
Who knew that she'd have such an impact?
Right.
Like, I never knew that buying her. I was like,
No.
And again, I don't think it's the doll itself.
Yeah.
But there's a little girl, there's an energy that hangs around her. But I'm like ping-ponging because I'm also feeling you said you had a daughter?
Yeah.
And so I'm feeling her as well. And then I'm feeling like I'm like seeing this like triangle of people connected. I see. Okay. So I wouldn't be surprised if you did have kids, like that it would be a girl.
Girl dad.
Nice.
Yeah. And I feel like there's like this like friendship trio that's going on. Your daughter though, I feel like she's actually going to be pretty stinking intuitive if she's not already. I don't know.
She's She's very intelligent. I would say she's intuitive. We've been told by other people that she's very advanced for her age and just like picks up on things very quickly.
Yeah. I feel like I'm hearing stuff about her future. She's going to be a speaker. I feel like
I could see that.
Nice.
And to definitely protect her from all the onslaught. I'm sure you're doing that.
I got that on lock, baby. Yeah. That's my like life goal at this point, is to protect her in every way I can. Like nothing else, nothing else matters at this point.
No dating until she's 18.
No first kiss till she's married. Just
real, fuck her up real good. Yeah. Does my daughter, is she into music?
I would assume if you are, probably.
I'm just going to download it onto her. Yeah.
Forcefully.
I feel like honestly she's going to be a little tornado.
Sweet.
I've seen her breaking things.
Nice.
Just wild child.
Drummer.
Yeah. We'll have to redirect that energy.
Yeah.
And I'm bringing it back, and this is like what I do at the end of like a session. I kind of like scan the room, ask if there's any other messages. And gosh, there's like this again, the group of people that you've talked about are kind of over here. I just like see like a sea of them. I'm not really, there's faces, but
yeah,
they're kind of like, they have this like reverence and this like thank you. There is this message of thanks for sharing their stories, because I'm seeing both of you. They're showing me like late at night, you guys researching, you guys putting a lot of work into this, and they're talking to you. They're pointing you in the right direction of like where to find certain information. Actually, that's what that crystal ball is like. They're kind of bringing this back to like, you guys are psychic, whether or not you're paying attention. You're intuitive. You're picking up on these things, and they are kind of in your ear, helping feed that information to you. So maybe as you go forward, it could be something to mess around with to see if they, hey, what is this guy got to say? Does he have anything he wants to share about his story?
Yeah, so that's a great takeaway for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for being here. This has been such a treat. I mean, such a I feel like good vibes throughout this whole episode, and just so much knowledge too, and like
I learned a lot.
Yeah, I feel like we just attended like a boot camp this past 2 hours or so. But of course, I want you to let everybody know, because I want to do some more learning for sure. Where can people start learning how to be psychic with you? Yeah,
well, I always say my YouTube channel is a great place to start. I have a lot of free videos over there. But I also have like one-on-one sessions, so people can book me, and just if you want to pick my brain, or if you want me to give you some structure of where to start, you can start there. But then I also have courses. I have beginner level courses, up to masterclass courses about how to develop their abilities.
That's awesome. Nice. Yeah, we'll have everything linked below for you, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts or watching us on Spotify and YouTube. Just check out the links below. And you're on social media as well.
Yeah, I am Psychic Lauryn. Wherever you find me, Lauryn is with a Y.
Perfect. Yeah. Get connected. Become psychic with us.
Hell yeah.
We got some work to do. No, I'm there's so many things I need to like go and like just sit and like process everything, and
I totally get it.
Just like process through all of the different thoughts and emotions and all the new knowledge I learned today. So thank you so much, Lauryn.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome back anytime. Might even use you in the future for some other projects that we have too. It might be interesting to bring you along.
Yeah,
for some stuff.
I could be like phone a friend, phone a psychic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're like,
what do you think?
Yeah. But that's gonna be it for us today, guys. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Lights Out. Until next time, lights out, everybody.